Hello, family. Please subscribe. Enjoy your story.
You think I'm one of those women after your money? Excuse me.
So I'm going to be a father. Be a father.
Don't stand there acting confused. Taryn's voice cracked through the hallway, sharp enough to make two nurses stop mid-step. You think I don't see it? Huh? The way you look at me like I'm just another woman trying to get something from you? Grayson froze, not because people were watching, but because no one had ever spoken to him like that. Not like this, not without fear. He let out a slow breath, jaw tightening. Careful, he said quietly. You don't even know what you're saying. Taryn let out a dry laugh. Oh, I know exactly what I'm saying. She stepped closer, not intimidated, not hesitant. And you? She added, eyes locked on his. You're exactly the kind of man I said I'd never deal with again. Let me ask you something real quick. Yeah, you watching right now. Have you ever met someone who completely misjudged you, but somehow still saw straight through you at the same time? Because that's exactly what happened here. And trust me, this story, it doesn't go where you think it will. So before we go any further, do me a quick favor. Like this video, drop a comment, and subscribe. It really helps push these stories out, and you don't want to miss what's coming next. Now listen closely, because what started as tension turned into something neither of them was ready for. Grayson Hale wasn't a man people challenged. At 38, he had built a life most people only dreamed of. Luxury penthouse in downtown Chicago, black card, private access, influence that opened doors before he even touched them. But relationships, yeah, those didn't last. Not because he couldn't have them, but because he didn't trust them. 15 years. That's how long it had been since anything real lasted in his life. 15 years of women walking in and walking right back out. And every single time, he told himself the same thing. They all want something. Money, status, security, never him. At least, that's what he believed. Now here's where things get interesting. Because the one woman who didn't want anything from him was the one who changed everything. And her name? Taryn Ellison, 26, student nurse. Black, beautiful, sharp-minded, and not impressed by money. Not even a little. She had seen too much in life to be distracted by wealth. Grew up watching her mother hold a family together without help. Watched love fail more times than it succeeded. And, somewhere along the way, she made a decision. I'd rather be alone than disrespected. Simple, non-negotiable. So when she walked into that hospital room and saw Grayson sitting there like he owned the air itself, she didn't smile, didn't soften, didn't care. Sit up, she said, flipping through his chart. Grayson looked at her for a second, waiting for recognition. For that moment, people usually had when they realized who he was. It never came. You know who I am? He asked. Taryn didn't even look up. Pause. Then, a patient. Now let me ask you this. What happens when a man who controls everything meets a woman he can't control at all? Yeah, exactly. That's where this starts getting dangerous. At first, it was irritation. Then, curiosity. Then, something else. Something neither of them wanted to name. Because every time they were in the same room, something shifted. The air got heavier. The silence got louder. And the tension? Yeah, you could feel it. But here's the problem. Grayson didn't know how to handle something real. So what did he do? The same thing he always did. He pushed, he tested, and eventually, he broke it. You're just like the rest, he said one night, voice cold. Taryn blinked. What? All this attitude, this act, it's calculated, isn't it? Silence. Then, a slow shake of her head. Oh, wow. She let out a breath, almost laughing. But there was no humor in it. You really are damaged. Grayson's expression hardened. Excuse me? No, seriously, she said, stepping back. You don't see people, you see threats, you see transactions. That hit harder than he expected. And I'm not one of them, she added. Then she turned and walked away. Just like that. No begging, no explaining, nothing. And that should have been the end of it. But it wasn't, because months later, Grayson saw her again. Different, stronger, untouchable. And when he looked at her, really looked, that's when he noticed it. The subtle change, the truth he wasn't ready for. You're pregnant? Taryn met his eyes. Calm, unshaken. Yes. Silence filled the space between them. And then, what she said next. Yeah, that changed everything. You don't get to question my choices anymore. Grayson frowned. I deserve to know who the father is. Pause. Taryn held his gaze. And then she said, You already do. Wait, hold on. Because this right here, this is where everything flips. So if you think you know where this story is going, trust me, you don't. Keep watching. Because what happens next? It's not just about love. It's about truth, accountability, and a man who spent 15 years running from something. He was never meant to escape. And before we continue, drop a comment right now. Do you think he deserves a second chance? Or not? Let's get to the main story. Grayson Hale didn't wake up one day and decide to stop believing in love. No, it was built into him, slowly, quietly, repeatedly, like something that didn't break all at once, but cracked over time until there was nothing left to hold on to. He grew up in a house that looked perfect from the outside. Large estate just outside Chicago. Clean lawns, tall windows, expensive silence. The kind of place people pointed at and said, yeah, that's what success looks like. But inside was something else entirely. Don't speak over me when I'm talking. His father's voice wasn't loud. That was the unsettling part. It was controlled, sharp, final. Grayson stood near the dining table, maybe 10, maybe 11, hands slightly clenched at his sides. I didn't ask what you were doing. Silence. His mother sat across the table. Still, too still. She didn't look at Grayson, didn't defend him, didn't say anything at all. That was the first thing he learned about love. It wasn't loud affection. It was quiet endurance. His father controlled everything. Money, decisions, conversations, even emotions had rules in that house. You didn't cry. You didn't question. You didn't challenge. And if you did, well, you learned quickly not to do it again. Grayson watched his mother shrink over the years. Not physically, but emotionally. She moved like someone who had learned to take up less space, spoke carefully, laughed softly, apologized even when she didn't need to, and every time she did, something in him tightened. One night, he couldn't have been more than 12. He heard it again, voices through the wall. His father, cold, dismissive. You think I built all of this for you to question me? His mother's voice came after, smaller. I'm not questioning, I thought maybe we could. You thought wrong. Silence. Then a quiet, broken, okay. Grayson sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the wall, not moving, not reacting, just listening. And something shifted in him that night. Not anger, not sadness, something colder. Because right there, that was the moment he stopped believing love was safe. The next morning, everything looked normal again. Breakfast set, coffee poured, his father reading the paper like nothing had happened. His mother smiled, not a real one, but practiced, polished, convincing enough for anyone who didn't know what to look for. Eat, his father said without looking up. Grayson sat down, quiet, observing, learning, and over time, he built a conclusion that felt logical. If love meant losing your voice, if love meant becoming smaller, if love meant staying in something that slowly erased you, then what was the point? So he adapted. Early, he became sharp, aware, controlled, At school, he didn't get into fights, didn't need to. He understood people, what they wanted, what they responded to, and more importantly, how to stay untouched. By the time he reached college, Grayson was already different. Not in the obvious ways. He was charming when he needed to be, confident, intelligent, focused. But there was something underneath that people couldn't quite name. Distance. Like, no matter how close you got, you never really reached him. His first serious relationship happened around that time. A girl who saw through just enough of him to think she understood him. And for a while, he let himself experience something that almost felt like normal. Until one night, "You don't trust me," she said it quietly, not accusing, just tired. Grayson leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "That's not true." She shook her head. "No, it is. You're always waiting for something to go wrong." He didn't respond immediately. Because she wasn't wrong. "I just think people change," he said finally. "That's not the same as expecting them to hurt you." He looked at her then, really looked, and for a second, just a second, there was something like hesitation in his eyes, like he almost wanted to explain, but instead, he did what he always did. He pulled back. "Maybe we're just not compatible." Simple, clean, detached. That was the pattern. Not explosive endings. Not dramatic exits. Just quiet withdrawals. Before anything could get too real. Because real meant risk. And risk meant becoming his mother. And that? Yeah, that was never going to happen. By the time Grayson turned 30, relationships had become something he understood, but never believed in. They started the same way every time. Effortless, magnetic, controlled. He knew how to draw people in. The confidence, the composure, the way he listened just enough to make someone feel seen. It worked, always worked. And for a while, it almost looked like something real. Dinners, trips, late-night conversations, moments where even he, just briefly, felt something close to connection. But then, it shifted. Always, it could be something small. A question, a request, a moment of vulnerability from the other person. "Where do you see this going?" That one came up a lot. Grayson would pause, not because he didn't have an answer, but because the truth wasn't something people wanted to hear. "I don't like putting labels on things," he'd say smoothly. Or, "Let's just enjoy what we have right now." And for a while, that worked too. Until it didn't, because eventually, people want more clarity, security, commitment, things Grayson didn't believe in. "You're emotionally unavailable." One woman said it plainly. No anger, just acceptance. He exhaled slowly. "That's not fair." She let out a small laugh. "It is. You just don't like hearing it." He didn't argue, didn't raise his voice, didn't try to fix it. He just checked out, right there. "Well, if that's how you feel," he said, standing up. And that was it. No chasing, no explaining, no looking back. And the thing is, he didn't feel guilty. Not really. Because in his mind, he was being honest. He never promised forever, never pretended to be something he wasn't. So if people expected more, that wasn't on him. At least, that's what he told himself. But there were moments, small ones, quiet ones, late at night, alone in his penthouse, city lights stretching endlessly beyond the glass, where something felt off, not loneliness exactly. He wasn't someone who needed constant company, but something else. A kind of emptiness that didn't make noise, but didn't go away either. He'd pour a drink, sit in silence, let the feeling pass, and eventually, it always did, or at least, it faded enough for him to ignore it again, because facing it would mean admitting something he wasn't ready to confront, that maybe, just maybe, the problem wasn't everyone else. But he never stayed in that thought long enough to let it settle. Instead, he moved forward. Same pattern, different faces, same ending. Clean, controlled, disconnected, and after a while, 15 years of it. It became his normal, no expectations, no attachments, no risk, just the way he liked it. Or at least, the way he told himself he did. By the time Grayson Hale reached his late 30s, it wasn't just that his relationships failed, it was that he had already decided, long before they even began, how they would end. He didn't see women the way most men did. Not really. Where others saw connection, he saw patterns. A smile, measured, kindness, intentional, interest, strategic. To him, everything had a reason, and most of those reasons led back to one thing: what could they gain? It wasn't something he said out loud, not at first, because saying it would make it sound extreme, but in his mind, it felt logical, consistent, proven. You don't think highly of women, do you? That question came from someone who had stayed longer than most, not because he let her in, but because she was patient enough to observe. Grayson didn't answer immediately. He leaned back slightly, eyes narrowing just enough to show he was thinking. "I think people are predictable," he said. She tilted her head. "That's not what I asked." A pause, small, but noticeable. Then he exhaled. "I think," he said slowly, "that most people are motivated by what benefits them." She studied him for a second. "And women?" His jaw shifted slightly. "Especially when there's something to gain." Silence filled the room. Not loud, not dramatic. Just heavy. She nodded once. Not agreeing, just understanding. "That's sad," she said quietly. And, for a brief moment, something flickered across his face. Something he didn't like. "Or maybe it's realistic," he replied. But the truth? That belief didn't come from nowhere. It was reinforced, repeatedly. After college, as his career began to rise, things changed. The attention increased, not gradually. All at once, people who didn't notice him before started noticing. Women who wouldn't have looked twice. At first he didn't question it. Why would he? Success attracts attention. That's normal. But then, patterns started forming. Conversations that shifted too quickly toward what he owned. Questions that sounded casual, but weren't. Subtle interest in his lifestyle more than his thoughts. "You must love living here," one woman said, looking around his penthouse. "It's impressive." Grayson watched her closely. "It's just a place." She laughed lightly. "Well, not everyone can afford just a place like this." That was the moment. Not dramatic, not explosive, but clear. It wasn't about him, not really. And once he saw it, he couldn't unsee it. Every interaction started to feel filtered. If someone complimented him, he wondered why. If someone showed interest, he questioned the motive. If someone got close, he started pulling away before they could settle in, because in his mind, it was only a matter of time. They always show it eventually. He said that once, not to anyone in particular, just out loud. And the more he believed it, the more it shaped his reality. Because when you expect people to disappoint you, you start looking for the moment they will. And when you look hard enough, you'll always find something, even if it's small, even if it's nothing. To Grayson, it was confirmation. You see what you want to see. Someone told him that once. He didn't argue, didn't dismiss it, but he didn't accept it either. Because from where he stood, he had evidence, experience, proof. So why would he ignore that? Why would he risk believing something different? Just to be proven wrong again? No, that wasn't how he operated. Trust wasn't something he gave. It was something people had to fight for, earn, prove. And even then, it was temporary. Because deep down, there was a limit. A point where he would stop, pull back, disconnect. Before anything could get too real. Before anything could hurt him. And the thing is, he didn't even see it as a flaw. To him, it was protection, necessary, logical, unavoidable. But what he didn't realize was that in protecting himself from being used, he had built walls so high that nothing real could reach him at all. From the outside, Grayson Hale looked like a man who had everything under control, and in many ways, he did. His business decisions were precise, calculated, sharp. He didn't second guess, didn't hesitate, didn't let emotion interfere. People respected that, feared it even, because when Grayson made a move, it wasn't random, it was intentional, and he carried that same mindset into his personal life. Control, distance, clarity, no room for unpredictability, no space for emotional chaos. But here's the thing about control. It can look a lot like confidence. Until you look closer. Grayson spoke with certainty, moved with purpose, made decisions quickly. But underneath all of that was something else, a need, not just to lead, but to avoid losing control. You don't like not being in charge, do you? That question came during a dinner meeting, not romantic, not personal, just observant. Grayson glanced up briefly. I don't like inefficiency. The man across from him smirked slightly. That's not what I meant. Grayson didn't respond, because he knew exactly what he meant, and he didn't like it. Because control for him wasn't about power, not really. It was about safety. If he controlled the situation, then nothing unexpected could happen. No surprises, no vulnerability, no risk. And that worked. In business, in decisions, in environments where outcomes could be predicted. But in relationships, that's where things broke down. Because people aren't predictable. Not completely. And Grayson didn't know how to exist in something he couldn't control. So instead, he dominated it. Not loudly, not aggressively, but subtly. He decided the pace, set the tone, defined the boundaries. And the moment something shifted outside of that, he pulled away. Not because he didn't feel anything, but because feeling something meant losing control. And losing control meant becoming vulnerable. And vulnerability, that was the one thing he had spent his entire life avoiding. You don't let people in. That statement came from someone who had gotten closer than most. Grayson leaned back, expression unreadable. That's not true. She shook her head slowly. No, you let them get close enough to think they matter. Pause. Then she added, but not close enough to actually reach you. That landed, not visibly, not immediately, but somewhere beneath the surface. It stuck, because there was truth in it. Truth he didn't want to sit with. So instead, he dismissed it, moved on, kept things the way they were, controlled, predictable, safe. But safety came at a cost, and, over time, that cost became clearer, not in loud, dramatic ways, but in quiet moments, empty rooms, late nights, conversations that ended too soon, connections that never fully formed, and a life that looked complete, but felt unfinished, just slightly, just enough to notice, if he allowed himself to, but he didn't, because acknowledging that feeling would mean confronting something deeper, that maybe all the control in the world couldn't replace what he had been avoiding all along. Connection, real, unfiltered, uncontrolled, and that terrified him more than anything else. Taryn Ellison didn't grow up around silence. Her world was alive, not perfect, no, far from it, but real in a way that didn't pretend. Sunday mornings in her house weren't quiet. They were filled with sound. Gospel music playing low from the kitchen speaker, the smell of seasoned food drifting through the air, cabinet doors opening, closing, rhythmically, like part of a routine that had been repeated for years. Girl, if you don't get up, I'm leaving you behind. Her mother's voice carried down the hallway, firm but not harsh. Taryn groaned softly, pulling the blanket over her head. I'm up, she mumbled, even though she wasn't. A pause, then footsteps. Slow, knowing. The door creaked open. Her mother said, standing there with her arms crossed. That don't sound like someone who's up. Taryn peeked out from under the blanket, squinting. Okay, I'm getting up now. For real. Her mother didn't move, didn't rush, just watched her, because in that house, words didn't mean much without action. 5 minutes, Taryn added quickly. Her mother raised a brow. 3. And just like that, Taryn sat up. That was the kind of authority her mother carried. Not loud, not controlling, but grounded, unshakable. Her name was Denise Ellison, a woman who had learned, through experience, not theory, what it meant to hold a family together without losing herself in the process. Taryn didn't grow up with a picture-perfect idea of love. She grew up with honesty. Her mother had been in a relationship once, a serious one, the kind people expected would turn into marriage. But it didn't. And Taryn remembered that time. Not every detail, but enough. Enough to recognize the shift. Her mother used to laugh more, move lighter, speak freely. Then, slowly, that changed. The man wasn't violent, wasn't loud, wasn't obviously bad, but he was dismissive, controlling in quiet ways, the kind that didn't leave marks, but left impact. You always think you know better. Taryn overheard him say once. Her mother stood still, not arguing, not shrinking, just listening. Then she responded, calm, measured. I don't need to know better. I just need to know what I won't accept. That was the moment everything shifted, because a week later, he was gone. No chaos, no drawn-out arguments, no begging, just gone. Taryn didn't fully understand it at the time, but she remembered asking, why didn't you try to fix it? Her mother looked at her for a long second. Then she said something that stayed with her for life. Because I wasn't broken. That sentence? Yeah, that became a foundation. From that point on, Taryn grew up with a different understanding of love. It wasn't about staying no matter what. It wasn't about sacrificing yourself to keep something alive. It was about choosing yourself first. Every time. Her mother didn't hate men, didn't speak bitterly, didn't teach fear. What she taught was awareness. Pay attention to how someone treats you when they don't need anything from you, she would say while cooking. Anybody can be nice when it benefits them. Taryn would nod, even when she didn't fully grasp it. But over time, she started to see it. In people, in relationships around her. In the subtle ways, respect either existed or didn't. Their home wasn't rich, not even close. But it was full of structure, full of accountability, full of love that didn't come with conditions. You don't chase validation, her mother told her once, handing her a plate. You build yourself up so strong that the right people recognize your value without you having to prove it. Taryn took that seriously, not in a loud way, not in a performative way, but internally, quietly, consistently. She became someone who observed more than she spoke, someone who listened carefully, someone who didn't rush into things just because they looked good on the surface. And most importantly, she became someone who knew when to walk away, even when it wasn't easy, because she had seen what happened when you didn't. And she promised herself she would never become that version of her mother, the one who stayed too long. She would only be the version that walked away strong. Taryn didn't avoid relationships. She just didn't settle in them. There's a difference, because despite everything she learned, she still believed in love, real love, the kind that didn't require you to shrink, didn't require you to explain your worth, didn't leave you questioning where you stood, but believing in something. And experiencing it? Yeah, those are two different things. Her first serious relationship came in her early 20s. Someone she met during her early college years. He was charming, attentive, the kind of man who knew exactly what to say. You're different, he told her once, smiling, like, you don't move like everybody else. Taryn smiled back slightly. Maybe because I'm not trying to be everybody else. That confidence, it attracted him. At first, because confidence looks good from a distance. Up close, it can feel like resistance. And that's when things started to shift. It wasn't immediate, not obvious, Just small things. Comments disguised as jokes. Why you always gotta be so serious? Suggestions that sounded harmless. You don't have to question everything, you know. Moments where her independence started to feel like a problem. You don't really need me, do you? He asked one night. Taryn paused. Not confused, just processing. I want you, she said carefully. That's different. He didn't like that answer, because he didn't want to be wanted. He wanted to be needed. And that's where things began to fall apart. Arguments became more frequent, not explosive, but persistent. You act like you don't care, he said once. Taryn shook her head. No, I just don't panic when things don't go your way. That didn't sit well with him, because control, even emotional control, was something he expected, and Taryn didn't give that. So eventually, the relationship ended, not dramatically, not suddenly, just inevitably, and that became a pattern. Not the same type of man, not the same situations, but the same outcome. Men who were drawn to her strength, until they realized they couldn't control it. Men who admired her independence, until it made them feel unnecessary. Men who said they wanted something real, but weren't ready for someone who actually required it. You're too much sometimes. That one stuck, not because she believed it, but because of what it revealed. That being strong, being self-aware, being unwilling to accept less, would always intimidate the wrong people. And instead of changing herself, she adjusted her expectations, not lowering them, just refining them. I'm not here to convince anyone to treat me right, she told her friend once. If they don't see it on their own, that's already the answer. So she stopped explaining, stopped overextending, stopped giving people chances they hadn't earned. And, over time, she became more selective, more guarded, but not closed, because deep down, she still believed, she just refused to believe blindly. And that's what made her different, not unavailable, not difficult, just unwilling to settle for something that didn't match her worth. And that was exactly why. When she eventually met Grayson Hale, everything was going to collide. Taryn Ellison didn't wake up confident. She built it, piece by piece, moment by moment, choice by choice. Because self-worth, real self-worth, doesn't come from compliments. It comes from what you tolerate, what you reject, what you walk away from, even when it hurts. And Taryn had walked away more times than she could count, not because she didn't care, but because she cared enough about herself not to stay where she wasn't respected. You don't give people enough chances. That's what one of her friends told her once, sitting across from her in a small cafe just off campus. Taryn stirred her drink slowly, not defensive, not offended, just thoughtful. I give chances, she said. I just don't give unlimited access. Her friend frowned slightly. That sounds the same. Taryn shook her head. No, it's not. A pause. Then she leaned back, exhaling softly. Giving someone a chance means you're open to seeing who they are, she explained. Giving them unlimited access means you're ignoring what they've already shown you. Her friend didn't respond immediately, because that made sense. Taryn wasn't cold. She wasn't distant. She wasn't one of those people who pushed everyone away just to feel safe. But she paid attention to tone, to effort, to consistency, because she had learned something early on. People don't usually change suddenly. They reveal themselves gradually. And when they do, you either accept what you see, or you lie to yourself about it. Taryn refused to lie to herself. There were moments, though. Moments where it would have been easier to, late nights, quiet thoughts, watching other people in relationships that looked easier, less complicated, less guarded, and sometimes, she wondered, what if I'm too strict? The thought crossed her mind more than once, not out loud, just internally. But every time that thought appeared, another one followed. Clear, steady, unshaken. No, you're just not desperate. And that grounded her again. Because desperation, that's what made people ignore red flags. That's what made people stay too long. That's what made people accept things they knew, deep down, they shouldn't. And Taryn had seen that too closely, too clearly. So she created rules for herself. Not written down, not spoken often, but firm. She wouldn't beg for attention. She wouldn't compete for respect. She wouldn't explain her value to someone who refused to see it. And most importantly, she wouldn't stay where she felt uncertain about her place. "If I have to question how you feel about me," she once said quietly, "then I already have my answer." That mindset didn't make her life easier. If anything, it made it harder, because it meant walking away when staying would have been more comfortable. It meant being alone when settling would have filled the space. But it also meant something else. Peace, the kind that doesn't come from having someone, but from not losing yourself trying to keep them. And over time, that peace became non-negotiable. So when people met Taryn, they felt it, not in an obvious way, not in something she said, but in how she carried herself. She didn't seek approval, didn't overextend, didn't rush. She was present, aware, grounded, and that made her different, the kind of different that didn't chase attention, but attracted it anyway. And that? Yeah, that was exactly the kind of woman Grayson Hale wasn't prepared for. Taryn didn't choose nursing because it sounded good. She chose it because it meant something, because growing up, she had seen what it looked like when people didn't have proper care, family members waiting too long, neighbors avoiding hospitals because of cost, stories that ended differently, because help came too late, and that stayed with her. So when it came time to decide her path, she didn't hesitate. "I want to be where I'm needed," she told her mother one evening. Her mother looked at her for a moment, then nodded. "Then be ready," she said, "because that kind of work will test you." Taryn understood that. At least, she thought she did. But nothing fully prepares you for reality. The long hours, the pressure, the emotional weight of watching people struggle. And sometimes not make it. Her training took her to Atlanta, a city full of movement, energy, contrast, and eventually, she found herself working in one of the busiest hospitals in the area. The environment was intense, monitors beeping constantly, voices overlapping, footsteps echoing through hallways that never really rested. Room 214 needs assistance. Vitals are dropping. Now, where's the attending? Everything moved fast, too fast sometimes, but Taryn adapted, not by rushing, but by focusing. She learned to stay steady when things around her weren't, learned to separate emotion from action, just enough to function, but never enough to lose her empathy. Because that was important to her. "Don't let this place harden you," one of the senior nurses told her early on. Taryn nodded. "I won't." And she meant that, because she didn't want to become numb, didn't want to treat people like cases instead of individuals. So she paid attention to the small things, a patient's tone, a family member's expression, the way someone looked when they were scared but trying not to show it. And she responded to that, not just the medical side, but the human side. "Hey, you're okay," she said softly to an older woman gripping the hospital bed. "I'm right here." The woman's breathing slowed slightly. Moments like that, they mattered, even when no one else noticed. And that's what set Taryn apart. Not just her skill, but her presence. She didn't just do her job. She showed up fully, every shift, every patient, every moment, even when she was tired, even when her feet ached, even when the day felt heavier than usual. Because for her, this wasn't just work, it was purpose. And that purpose, it grounded her, kept her focused, kept her moving forward. Until one day, a new patient was admitted. Nothing unusual about that. Not at first. Just another name on a chart. Another case to handle. Another shift to get through. But when she walked into that room, everything changed. Because sitting there, calm, controlled, unreadable, was Grayson Hale, and neither of them knew it yet. But that moment? Yeah. That was the beginning of something neither of them was ready for. The door clicked open softly. Taryn didn't rush in, didn't hesitate either. Just stepped in like she always did. Focused, composed, present. Sit up. No greeting, no smile. Just instruction. Grayson looked at her, really looked this time. Because something about her tone, it didn't match what he was used to. Most people adjusted the moment they walked into his space. Their voices softened, their posture shifted, their awareness changed. She didn't. "You always this direct?" he asked, leaning back slightly instead of sitting up. Taryn flipped through his chart. "Only when I need to be." A pause. Then she added, without looking at him, "And right now, I need you to sit up." There it was again. No performance, no effort to impress. Grayson slowly adjusted his position, watching her closely. Not because he had to, but because he was curious. "You know who I am?" he asked. Taryn checked his vitals, calm, efficient. Silence. Then, a patient. That landed, not heavily, but noticeably. Grayson's jaw tightened just slightly. "You don't seem impressed." Now she looked at him. Not long, just enough. "I'm at work," she said, "not a networking event." And just like that, something shifted. Not attraction, not yet, but attention. Because for the first time in a long time, someone wasn't reacting to him. They were responding to him. And there's a difference. He leaned back slightly, studying her. "You always this cold?" Taryn didn't flinch, didn't react emotionally. "I'm professional," she corrected. Another pause. Then she added, "If you're looking for something else, you're in the wrong place." Now that was new. Grayson wasn't used to being put in position, not like that. But instead of pushing back, he adjusted, not outwardly, but internally, because something about her didn't fit his usual categories, and that made him pay attention. The next day, he requested her again, not directly, of course not, just subtle. "Who handled my case yesterday?" He asked one of the staff casually. "Taryn," they replied. He nodded once. "I'd prefer consistency." That was all it took. And just like that, their paths crossed again. "You again," she said, stepping into the room. No surprise in her voice, just recognition. "Problem?" Grayson asked. Taryn shrugged lightly. "Depends." "You planning to follow instructions today?" A small smirk touched his lips. "Maybe." She raised a brow. That doesn't sound promising." And there it was again. That tone. That calm confidence that didn't ask for approval. It didn't take long for a pattern to form. Short conversations, sharp exchanges, moments that lingered just a second longer than necessary. "You always question everything?" he asked one afternoon. Taryn adjusted the monitor beside him. "Only things that don't make sense." "And I don't make sense?" She paused, looked at him. Not yet. That should have annoyed him, but it didn't. If anything, it pulled him in further, because she wasn't easy to read. And Grayson was used to reading people quickly, used to understanding their motivations, their angles, their intentions. But with Taryn, it wasn't clear. And that lack of clarity, that was pulling him in. Days passed, then a week. His recovery should have been quicker. But somehow, there was always a reason to stay just a little longer. A test here, an observation there, nothing obvious, nothing that raised concern, but enough. Enough to keep her in his orbit. And she noticed. "You heal slower than expected," she said one evening, reviewing his chart. Grayson leaned back slightly. "Or maybe I just prefer good care." Taryn didn't react immediately. Then, "Well, don't confuse good care with extra attention." That hit, not harshly, but directly, and for a moment, he didn't respond, because he understood what she was saying. And more importantly, he understood that she wasn't wrong. The tension between them? It wasn't loud, it wasn't obvious, but it was there, in the pauses, in the way conversations didn't fully end, in the way eye contact lasted just a little longer than it should. One evening, late, quieter than usual, Taryn adjusted the bandage on his arm, focused, precise. Grayson watched her. Not casually this time, intentionally. "You don't talk much about yourself," he said. Taryn didn't look up. "Not here to..." "Why not?" A pause. Then, "Because this isn't about me." He tilted his head slightly. "Everything's about people," he said. "You can't separate that." That made her stop, just for a second. Then she looked at him. "You really believe that?" Grayson held her gaze. "Don't you?" She considered it, but didn't answer right away. Instead, she finished what she was doing, stepped back, then said quietly, "I believe people show you who they are, if you pay attention." That landed, not loudly, but deeply, because for the first time, it felt like she wasn't just talking in general. She was talking to him, and something about that made him feel seen, not in a comfortable way, but in a real one. That night, he didn't sleep easily, not because of pain, but because of thought, because her words, they stayed, and that didn't usually happen. The next day, he was different, subtle, but noticeable, less sharp, less guarded in tone, not open, but less closed. "You always this serious?" he asked. Taryn glanced at him briefly. "Only when it matters." And, "Does this matter?" A pause. She looked at him again, longer this time. "It depends," she said. "On what?" She didn't say, but the silence that followed, yeah. It said, enough. Something was changing. Not dramatically. Not all at once, but slowly, carefully, like two people standing at the edge of something, neither fully stepping in. Because stepping in meant risk, and both of them, in their own ways, understood exactly what that meant. But here's the thing. Tension like that, it doesn't stay neutral forever. Eventually, it shifts. And when it does, it forces something to happen. Good or bad. And in their case, yeah, it was heading somewhere neither of them was ready for. Because the closer they got, the more dangerous it became. Not because of what was happening, but because of what it could become. And Grayson? He didn't do well with things he couldn't control. And Taryn? She didn't stay in situations that didn't feel right. So when the moment came, when everything finally shifted, it wasn't going to be quiet. It wasn't going to be easy. And it definitely wasn't going to end the way either of them expected. The shift didn't happen all at once. It never does. It started in the small things. The way silence between them no longer felt empty. The way conversations didn't need to be filled with constant words. And that was new for Grayson, because silence for him had always meant distance, disconnection, an ending waiting to happen. But with Taryn, it felt different. It felt present. "You're staring." Her voice cut through his thoughts, calm but direct. Grayson didn't look away immediately, just thinking. She adjusted something on the tray beside him, not looking at him. That usually gets people in trouble. A slight pause. Then, "Is that what happened to you?" he asked. Now she looked at him, not defensive, just steady. "No," she said. "I pay attention." That's different. That word again. Attention. It echoed in his mind longer than it should have, because he knew, deep down, that was something he avoided. Not seeing people, but seeing them clearly, because clarity came with responsibility, and responsibility meant you couldn't pretend anymore. Days passed, and something subtle but undeniable kept building. Grayson found himself waiting, not for treatment, not for updates, for her. And that realization, yeah, it didn't sit comfortably. He wasn't used to anticipating someone's presence, wasn't used to adjusting his awareness around someone else. But there it was. You seem distracted today. Taryn's voice was softer this time, not probing, just noticing. Grayson exhaled slowly, just thinking. About? A pause. He almost brushed it off, almost gave a surface-level answer. But something about the way she asked made that feel unnecessary. Patterns, he said. Taryn tilted her head slightly. What kind? He hesitated. Just briefly. People, he said. How they behave. She nodded once. And what have you figured out so far? He leaned back slightly. That it's predictable. That answer came too quickly. Too practiced. Taryn noticed. Is it? She asked. Grayson met her gaze. From my experience, yeah. A pause settled between them. Not tense, but weighted. Then she spoke again. Or maybe you just expect people to act a certain way, and then you treat them like they already have. That landed, not sharply, but deeply. Grayson's expression didn't change much, but something behind his eyes shifted. That's not how that works, he said. Taryn didn't argue, didn't push. She just held his gaze for a second longer, then said quietly, it might be. And just like that, she moved on, back to her work, back to her routine. But he didn't move on, because that thought, it stayed. Later that evening, the hospital had quieted down, not completely, but enough for the energy to shift. Taryn walked back into his room, reviewing notes. Grayson was sitting upright this time, already waiting. You're late. She didn't react. I'm on time, she said. A pause. Then he added, you weren't here earlier. Now she looked at him. I had other patients. That was simple, obvious, logical. But something about the way he said it. Yeah, that made her pause. Why? She asked. Grayson hesitated. Not long, but long enough to notice. No reason, he said. Taryn studied him for a second, then nodded slightly. Right. But the tone? It said she didn't fully believe that, and that bothered him. Not because she doubted him, but because she saw through him. You don't like not knowing things, do you? He asked suddenly. Taryn raised a brow. I don't like assumptions, she replied. That's not the same thing. No, she said. It's worse. That caught him off guard. How? She set the chart down, finally giving him her full attention. Because assumptions make people act like they understand something, without actually taking the time to do it. A pause. Then she added, and that usually leads to problems. Grayson held her gaze. And what if the assumptions are based on experience? Taryn didn't answer immediately. She took a breath. Steady, measured, then, experience tells you what happened, she said. It doesn't tell you what will. Silence. That one? Yeah. That one hit differently, because it challenged something deeper, something foundational. And Grayson wasn't used to that. The tension between them shifted again. Not just curiosity now. Something heavier, something closer. But also more dangerous, because the more they talked, the more they saw each other. And the more they saw each other, the harder it became to stay detached. One evening, as she adjusted his bandage again, their hands brushed. Light, accidental, but neither of them pulled away immediately. Just a second too long. Grayson's voice lowered slightly. You're different. Taryn didn't react right away. Then, I know. No hesitation, no modesty, no question, just certainty. And that did something to him, because he wasn't used to people knowing who they were. Without needing validation, you don't try to impress, he said. Taryn met his gaze. I don't need to. Another pause. Then she added, and neither should you. That landed harder than the others, because it wasn't just observation, it was challenge. Grayson leaned back slowly. You think I'm trying to impress you? Taryn didn't answer immediately. She held his gaze. Then, I think you're used to people being impressed. Silence. Then she turned and continued her work. Like the moment hadn't just shifted something, but it had. Because for the first time in a long time, Grayson felt something unfamiliar. Not control, not dominance, not detachment, but awareness. Of her, of himself, of something forming between them. That didn't follow his usual rules. And that's when it became dangerous, because the closer he got, the more he risked losing the one thing he had built his entire life around. Control. And Taryn? She could feel it too. Not in obvious ways, not in something he said, but in the shift, the subtle change in tone, the pauses that lasted longer, the way he looked at her now, not just observing, but trying to understand. And that, yeah, that's where things start to get complicated. Because attraction, that's easy, but connection forces truth, and truth doesn't always align with comfort. So, when the moment came, when something finally pushed too far, it wasn't going to be quiet, it wasn't going to be controlled, and it definitely wasn't going to leave either of them unchanged. Because what they were building, yeah, it was already too real to ignore, and neither of them knew yet just how much it was about to cost them. The shift didn't announce itself. It never does. It crept in, quietly, subtly, until one moment, it wasn't subtle anymore. That evening, the hospital felt different, quieter than usual. The kind of quiet that made everything else feel louder. Footsteps, breathing, thoughts. Taryn stepped into the room, reviewing his chart, like always. Focused, professional. But Grayson? He wasn't the same. He was watching her before she even spoke. Not casually, not curiously, intentionally. You keep doing that. Taryn didn't look up. Doing what? Acting like none of this affects you. Now she paused, just for a second, then slowly. She lifted her eyes to meet his. What exactly is this? A beat. Grayson leaned forward slightly, elbows resting on his knees. This, he repeated, gesturing lightly between them. This tension, these conversations, the way you... He stopped, just short. Taryn's expression didn't change. The way I what? She asked. That question hung there. Not aggressive, not soft either. Just direct. Grayson exhaled slowly. The way you act like you're above it. That did it. Not loud, not explosive. But something in the room shifted. Taryn straightened slightly. I'm not above anything, she said calmly. I just don't blur lines that don't need to be blurred. Grayson let out a short breath. That's convenient. Her brows pulled together slightly. Convenient? Yeah, he said, standing now, because it lets you stay in control without actually being honest. Silence. Not empty, not light, heavy. Taryn set the chart down slowly. Be careful, she said, not loud, but firm. Grayson didn't back down. About what? He asked. About assuming you understand me, she replied. A pause. Then he stepped closer. Not too close, but enough. Then help me understand, he said. There it was. The tension, no longer subtle, no longer unspoken. Just there. Taryn held his gaze, unshaken. You don't want to understand, she said quietly. You want to define. That hit, and for a second, just a second, something flickered in his expression, but instead of stepping back, he leaned into it. Because every time I try to understand someone, he said, voice tightening slightly, it ends the same way. There it was, not fully exposed, but close. Taryn noticed. Of course she did. And what way is that? She asked. Grayson let out a breath. Sharp, controlled. They want something. The words came out flat, certain, final, and just like that. The moment shifted again. Taryn's expression changed. Not dramatically, but enough. She let out softly, shaking her head just once. So, that's what this is about. Grayson frowned slightly. What does that mean? She took a step back now, not retreating, just creating space. It means you're not responding to me, she said, You're reacting to something that happened before me. Silence. Grayson didn't answer. Because that was too close. And he didn't like how close it felt. You don't know anything about me, he said. Taryn nodded slowly. You're right, she said. But I know patterns. That word again. Patterns. And suddenly, everything tightened. Yeah? He said, tone sharpening. Then tell me what pattern you think I'm following. A pause. Taryn looked at him carefully. Not judging, not emotional. Just clear. You push, she said. You test. You look for something that confirms what you already believe. Grayson's jaw clenched. And when you find it, she continued, you use it as a reason to disconnect. Silence. Not a word. Because she wasn't guessing. She was right. And that made something snap. So what? He said suddenly. What? You think you're different? Taryn didn't flinch. I know I am. That answer? Immediate, certain, unshaken. And for some reason, that irritated him more than anything else. Oh, I've heard that before, he said, voice colder now. I'm not like the others. Taryn's expression hardened slightly. I didn't say that, she replied. Same thing. No, she said firmly. It's not. A pause. Then, you're just not used to someone who doesn't need anything from you. That landed hard because it hit the exact place he kept protected. And instead of sitting with it, he reacted. That's what you want me to believe, he said, a slight edge creeping into his voice. That you're just... what? Here, out of pure intention? Taryn's eyes narrowed slightly. I'm here because it's my job. Right, he said, letting out a quiet scoff. Just your job. And that was the line. The one he didn't realize he had crossed. Because the moment those words settled, Taryn's entire energy shifted. Not emotional, not loud, but firm, final. Oh, she said quietly. Now, I get it. Grayson frowned. Get what? She held his gaze, unmoved. You don't just distrust people, she said. You reduce them. Silence. Then, and I'm not interested in being one of your assumptions. That hit deeper than anything else, because it wasn't reactive. It wasn't defensive. It was dismissive. And Grayson wasn't used to that. Not from someone he was still trying to figure out. Then maybe you're not as different as you think, he said, quieter now, but sharper. Taryn shook her head slowly. No, she said. A pause. Then, I just know when to walk away. And just like that, she turned. No hesitation, no second look. Just walked out. The door closed softly behind her. And the room? Yeah. It felt different now. Not tense. Not charged. Empty. Grayson stood there for a second. Still. Then, slowly, he sat back down. Exhaled. Right, he muttered under his breath. But the word didn't settle. Because something didn't feel right. Not the situation. Not her reaction. Him, for the first time in a long time. Something felt off. And he couldn't immediately explain it. Later that night, the city lights stretched across the window like always. Bright, endless. Grayson stood there, hands in his pockets, still thinking about what she said. You don't see people. You reduce them. That line. Yeah, it stayed. And for once, he didn't brush it off, didn't ignore it. He just stood there, quiet. No, he said softly. But it didn't sound convincing. And that was new. Because doubt wasn't something he allowed space for. But now, it was there. And it wasn't leaving. And the worst part? It wasn't just what she said. It was how she left. No argument. No need to prove a point. Just done. Like she had already decided. And Grayson? Yeah. He wasn't used to being left like that. Not without control. Not without the final word. Not without understanding where he stood. But here's the thing. That moment, that wasn't the breaking point. Not yet. That was just the beginning of it. Because what he didn't realize, what he couldn't see yet, Was that the pattern he thought protected him? Yeah. It had just cost him the one person who didn't fit it. And the next time he saw her, things wouldn't be the same. Not even close. Because this time, it wouldn't just be tension. It would be distance. Real distance. The kind that doesn't invite you back in. And Grayson Hale? Yeah. He had no idea how to fix something he didn't fully understand. And that's where things start to fall apart. The next time Taryn walked into the room, everything was different. Vitals looked stable. That was it. No extra words. No lingering presence. No. Her. Grayson noticed immediately. Of course he did. You're not even going to look at me. Taryn didn't pause. Didn't react. I just did, she said calmly, adjusting the monitor. That tone? Yeah, that wasn't the same. Not cold. Not angry. Worse. Detached. And that didn't sit well with him. You've been avoiding me. I've been working, she replied. A pause. Then he added, that's not what I meant. Now she stopped. Just slightly, then turned to face him. Then say what you mean. There it was again. That directness. Grayson exhaled slowly. You've been different. Taryn held his gaze. No, she said. I've been consistent. That landed because he understood what she meant. She hadn't changed. She had adjusted. Because of him, days passed like that. Short responses, minimal interaction, strict professionalism. And for the first time in a long time, Grayson felt something unfamiliar. He was being shut out. Not gradually, not emotionally, but intentionally, and he didn't know how to navigate that. It happened unexpectedly. Late shift. Quieter again. Taryn stood near the window, reviewing something on her tablet. Grayson watched her, longer than usual. Then, you always this hard to talk to. She didn't turn immediately. Only when I need to be. A pause. Then she walked over, not rushed, not hesitant, just deliberate. I need to ask you something, she said. That caught him off guard. Because Taryn? She didn't ask. What is it? He said. She hesitated, just slightly, not out of uncertainty. But wait. Then, I'm planning something. Grayson leaned forward slightly. That sounds vague. She ignored that. I've been thinking about my future, she continued. My timeline. My life. A pause. Then, I want children. That wasn't what he expected. At all. Okay, he said slowly. Taryn met his eyes now. I don't want to wait for the right person anymore. If I'm doing this, I don't want to keep going through it over and over. I'd rather have all my children at once. Silence. Then, I'm considering IVF. Grayson blinked. Processing. That's a big decision. I know. A pause. Then, I need a donor. That's when it clicked. Grayson leaned back slightly. And you're telling me this because... Taryn held his gaze. Steady. Because I want it to be you. Silence. Real silence. Not tension. Not confusion. Just stillness. Grayson didn't respond immediately. Because that wasn't something he saw coming. Why me? He asked finally. Taryn didn't over-explain. You're intelligent, she said. You're healthy. You're disciplined. A slight pause. And despite everything, there's something in you that's real. That last part? That hit differently. But he didn't show it. You don't even like me, he said. I don't need to like you, she replied. I need to respect what I'm choosing. That answer? Yeah. That was Taryn. Clear. Unapologetic. Grayson ran a hand over his jaw. This isn't small, he said. I know. And you're sure about this? Taryn didn't hesitate. Yes. Another pause. Then, and you wouldn't be responsible for anything beyond that, she added. No expectations. No obligations. That part. That made it easier. Simpler. Controlled. All right, he said finally. Taryn didn't react emotionally, just nodded once. Okay, and just like that, a decision was made, but what he didn't ask was how far she had already planned, and what she didn't say was how serious she truly was. It didn't take long for everything to collapse, because Grayson, he couldn't leave things alone. Days later, the thoughts started creeping in. Why him? Why now? Why this? And slowly, that old pattern returned. She chose you for a reason. The thought didn't feel neutral. It felt familiar, suspicious. And once that took hold, it spread. Taryn. His voice was sharper this time. She looked up briefly. Yes? He stood. We need to talk. She studied him for a second. Then, I'm working. This won't take long. A pause. Then she set the file down. Say what you need to say. Grayson stepped closer. This IVF thing. Taryn's expression didn't change. What about it? His jaw tightened slightly. It's convenient. Silence. Then, convenient? She repeated. Yeah, he said. You suddenly need a donor. And somehow, I'm the perfect choice. Taryn didn't react immediately. Then, you agreed. That doesn't mean I didn't think about it. There it was. The shift. What exactly are you implying? She asked. Grayson exhaled sharply. I'm saying, this feels calculated. That word landed heavy. Taryn's eyes hardened. Be careful. But he didn't stop. First, the attitude, he continued. Then the distance. Now this? She stared at him, unmoving. You really don't hear yourself, do you? What I hear, he said, voice tightening, is a situation that benefits you more than it benefits me. And that was it. The line, the final one. Taryn took a step back, not hurt. Done. You think I need something from you? She asked quietly. Grayson didn't answer directly, but his silence? Yeah, that was enough. Taryn let out a slow breath, then shook her head. Wow. Not loud, not emotional, just disappointed. You really are stuck, she said. Grayson frowned. What does that mean? It means, she said, meeting his eyes, no matter what's in front of you, you'll always turn it into something that fits your fear. That hit, but this time, he didn't process it. He reacted. So what? You expect me to just believe this is all pure? He said. Taryn's voice didn't rise. I don't expect anything from you anymore. And just like that, it ended. He thought that was it. That she'd walk away, cool off, and eventually drop the idea. Because in his mind, people didn't follow through like that. Not without attachment. Not without something tying them back. And he had already cut that. But Taryn? She wasn't like that. Weeks passed. No calls, no messages, no updates, nothing. And slowly, Grayson stopped thinking about it. Or at least, he told himself he did. Meanwhile, Taryn moved forward. Quietly, deliberately. Appointments, consultations, decisions, all made with the same clarity she had always carried. No hesitation, no second guessing. Because this wasn't about him. It never was. And when the process was complete, when everything was set, she made one final decision. Not one, not two, 4, 3 girls, 1 boy, a full life, built on her terms. And the moment she found out, she didn't cry, didn't panic. She smiled, soft, real, because for the first time in a long time, everything felt aligned. And Grayson? Yeah, he had no idea, not yet, because the next time he would see her, wouldn't just change the situation, it would change everything he thought he understood. And this time, he wouldn't be in control of any of it. Grayson wasn't expecting to see her again, not like this. It had been months, long enough for routine to return, for silence to settle, for everything that happened to feel distant, or at least, that's what he told himself. Until that day, the moment he saw her, everything stopped. Not dramatically, not outwardly, but internally, yeah. Everything shifted. Taryn stood across the hallway, different, not in a way that could be explained immediately, but in a way that could be felt stronger, calmer, untouchable, in a way she hadn't been before. And then he saw it. The curve of her stomach, subtle but unmistakable. "You're pregnant." The words came out before he could stop them. Taryn looked at him. No surprise, no tension, just acknowledgement. Yes. Silence. Grayson's mind moved fast, too fast, trying to place it, understand it, connect it, but something didn't sit right. Because this wasn't just any pregnancy. There was something else, something he couldn't explain yet. How far along? He asked. Taryn didn't answer immediately. Then, far enough. That answer? Yeah. That wasn't casual. It was intentional. And Grayson felt it. "I deserve to know." The words came out sharper than he intended. Taryn's expression didn't change. "Deserve?" She repeated. Grayson exhaled slowly. "If you're carrying a child, I think I have a right to ask who the father is." Silence. Then, Taryn stepped closer. Not emotional, not hesitant, just certain. "You already know." Grayson frowned. "What does that mean?" A pause. Then she looked him directly in the eye. "It's you." Nothing moved. Not the air. Not the moment. Just stillness. Grayson blinked. Once. Then again. "No. That's not." Because suddenly, pieces started connecting. The donor conversation. The timing. The silence. After. "You went through with it." Taryn nodded once. "Yes." Grayson ran a hand over his face. "You said there were no expectations." "There aren't," she replied calmly. "That doesn't change the fact that I made a decision for my life." She cut in. Silence. Then, "Yes." That answer surprised even him, because it wasn't anger. It was realization. Grayson stepped back, not physically unstable, but mentally. Yeah. Something cracked, because for the first time, he wasn't in control of the narrative. "You didn't tell me," he said. "You didn't ask," Taryn replied. That landed hard. "You made it sound like it wasn't serious." Taryn's gaze didn't waver. "I made it clear enough." A pause. Then, "I didn't hide anything," she added. Grayson let out a breath. Sharp, uneven. "This isn't just nothing," he said. "I never said it was nothing," she replied. "I said it wasn't dependent on you." That distinction? Yeah. That hit deeper than anything else, because it removed him from the center of it. And he wasn't used to that. Not like this. Not in something that mattered. "I would have..." He started, then stopped. Would have what? Stayed? Changed? Understood? He didn't even know. And that realization? Yeah. That was heavier than anything else. Taryn watched him carefully. Not with sympathy. Not with anger. Just clarity. "I didn't choose you," she said. Grayson looked up. "What?" "I chose my life." Silence. Then she continued. "You were part of a decision, not the reason for it." That landed, not painfully, but truthfully. And truth? Yeah. It doesn't always feel good. "But now you want to be involved?" she asked. Grayson didn't answer immediately, because, for the first time, he wasn't sure what he wanted, or what he deserved. "I don't know how to do this." The words came out quieter, less controlled. Taryn didn't respond right away, because that was new. "I don't know how to show up for something like this," he added. No arrogance, no defense, just honesty. And that mattered, but not enough, not yet. "Then figure it out," she said. Calm, firm, "but don't expect me to guide you through it." A pause. Then, "If you want to be part of this, you'll have to become someone who deserves that space." And just like that, the responsibility shifted completely. Grayson didn't rush it, didn't force his way in, didn't try to fix everything overnight, because for once, he understood something important. This wasn't about control. This was about consistency. So, he showed up, quietly. Appointments, check-ins, Presence, no pressure, no expectations, just effort. And over time, that effort started to mean something. Not everything, but something. Taryn noticed. Of course she did. But she didn't reward it immediately. Because consistency, it takes time to prove. Months passed, slowly, naturally. And when the day finally came, Grayson was there. Not at the center, not in control, but present, and for the first time in his life. That was enough. He looked at Taryn. Really looked. Not trying to define her, not trying to understand her through assumptions. Just seeing her. And she saw it. The difference, the shift, the change. Not perfect, but real. And for the first time, she didn't feel the need to walk away. Not because she had to stay, but because she could choose to. Because in the end, it wasn't love that changed him. It was truth. And for the first time in 15 years, Grayson Hale didn't run from it. He grew into it. Sometimes the biggest mistake isn't choosing the wrong person. It's refusing to heal the part of you that keeps pushing the right ones away. Take a moment. Really look at your patterns. What are you protecting yourself from? And what is it costing you? Be honest. If you were in Taryn's position, would you have walked away for good or given him another chance? If this story moved you even a little, comment your thoughts, and subscribe for more real, powerful stories like this. In Taryn's position, would you have walked away for good or given him another chance? If this story moved you even a little, comment your thoughts, and subscribe for more real, powerful stories like this.
Hope you enjoyed the story, and remember to subscribe. Bye.